megaloblastic anemia is a disorder in which DNA synthesis is impaired. That's the basic pathophysiology behind megaloblastic anemia. Okay, and it is characterized by presence of macrocytes in blood and megaloblasts in bone marrow. Now, normal volume of RBC around 80 to 100 femtoliter. Femtoliter is the unit. Okay, and when it is more than 100 femtoliter, like 100 to 120 or even 130 femtoliter, then we call it macrocytic anemia. Okay, this is normal RBC and this is macrocytic anemia. Now, what is megaloblast? Blast means larger in size. Okay, and in megaloblast you can see there is difference in between nucleus and cytoplasm maturation. There is asynchrony and it is larger in size. That's why it's called megaloblast, and the anemia is called megaloblastic anemia. Now, epidemiology. Megaloblastic anemia is common in tropical and subtropical countries like South Asia, Africa, and commonest age group of megaloblastic anemia presenting age 3 to 18 months. Okay, and it's most commonly associated with prolonged breastfeeding and maternal deficiencies. Etiologies I will explain later. Now, see the pathophysiology. Here, folate is converted to dihydrofolate and dihydrofolate is converted to tetrahydrofolate. This tetrahydrofolate is the active compound in DNA synthesis. And vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 acts as cofactor in conversion of homocysteine to methionine. So, both folate and vitamin B12, both are important part of DNA synthesis. So, when there will be deficiency of vitamin B12 or folate or both, then DNA synthesis will be impaired. Okay. And if DNA synthesis is impaired, then nuclear maturation will be ineffective. Cytoplasm maturation here is normal and nuclear maturation is abnormal. So, there is asynchrony between nucleus and cytoplasm maturation. So, DNA replication will be impaired. Cell cycle arrest will occur in the S phase or synthesis phase. Okay. So, then if there is ineffective formation of RBCs or megaloblast, that is ineffective erythropoiesis. Erythropoiesis will be there, but that is ineffective because immature form will come. So, that leads to anemia because there will be apoptosis, intramedullary apoptosis. Those immature RBCs will be destroyed mainly in bone marrow. And as a result, all three hematopoietic cell lines like erythroid, myeloid, megakaryocytic, all three cell lines will be suppressed and result will be anemia, leukopenia, thrombocytopenia. Hemoglobin count will be low, total count will be low, and platelet will be also low. Now, common etiologies of megaloblastic anemia: vitamin B12 deficiency, folate deficiency. Now, vitamin B12 deficiency is much more common than folic acid deficiency because we normally give iron and folic acid tablet to pregnant women during antenatal checkup. Okay, so incidence of folate deficiency will be less and vitamin B12 deficiency will be more. Other causes are hereditary orotic aciduria, thiamine responsive megaloblastic anemia, and medication induced. What are the medications? 6-mercaptourine, 5-fluorouracil. Now, 6-mercaptourine is purine analog and 5-fluorouracil is pyrimidine analog. Okay. Now before going to the deficiency, we should know the normal value of serum folic acid and serum vitamin B12. Normal serum folate level around 5 to 6 nanogram per ml. Okay, and when we will call it deficient, that is when the value will be less than 3 nanogram per milliliter. Then the folic acid is, we will call it deficient. And in vitamin B12, normal value of serum vitamin B12 200 to 800 picogram per milliliter. And when the vitamin B12 level will be less than 80 picogram per milliliter, we will call it vitamin B12 deficiency. Now, causes of folate deficiency. Whenever there is imbalance between supply and demand, then there will be deficiency. When supply will be less, demand will be more. Now, when supply will be less, that is inadequate intake of folic acid. Okay. And goat milk is folate deficient. Now, can you tell me some folate rich foods? Ki discuss korcho? Name some folate rich foods. Which vegetables? Cauliflower. Spinach, okay. And? Boso. Sono. Huh? So, folate rich foods. Hello? Folate rich foods are spinach, asparagus. Asparagus means satomuli. Okay. Avocado, citrus fruits, oranges, lemons, and legumes, beans, soybeans, okay, lentils. When a patient come with folate deficiency anemia, then we should prescribe folate rich foods. So we should know what are the common folate rich foods. And goat milk is folate deficient. Now, if there is increased requirement, then also folate will be deficient, where during pregnancy, in lactational period, in hyperthyroidism. Prolonged parenteral nutrition also cause folate deficiency. Now, medication. There are some drugs which impairs folate metabolism and some drugs which impairs folate absorption. So, the drugs which causes impaired folate absorption are phenytoin, phenobarbital, and the drugs inhibits folate metabolism are trimethoprim and methotrexate. Now, inborn error of metabolism. Dihydrofolate reductase deficiency, okay, and methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase deficiency. Now, see the flow chart. Here, dihydrofolate is converted to tetrahydrofolate by dihydrofolate reductase. So, if dihydrofolate reductase will not be there, then there will be no conversion, and as I said earlier, tetrahydrofolate is active compound. So, DNA synthesis will be impaired. And another enzyme, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, that converts 5,10 methylene tetrahydrofolate to 5-methyl THA tetrahydrofolate. So, if this enzyme is abnormal or deficient, so DNA synthesis will be impaired. So, two inborn error of metabolism, dihydrofolate reductase deficiency and methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase deficiency. Now see the causes of vitamin B12 deficiency. Again, if there is less supply and increased demand. So if there is less supply, like vegetarian diet, because the main source of vitamin B12 is animal protein, fish, meat, egg, okay, also dairy products. And if there is impaired absorption, infection with HIV, Helicobacter pylori or Giardia, okay, any infection, then the absorption will be impaired. Prolonged antibiotic use. Prolonged antibiotic use, it will disrupt the normal gut flora. So again absorption will be hampered. So there will be vitamin B12 deficiency. And inborn error of metabolism. There are several proteins like transcobalamin 1 and 2, intrinsic factor, all are involved in vitamin B12 metabolism. So when there will be deficiency of transcobalamin 1 and 2 or hereditary intrinsic factor deficiency, so vitamin B12 deficiency will be there. And another syndrome, Imerslund-Grasbeck syndrome, that is defect in intestinal receptor. Okay, the receptor doesn't work properly, so vitamin B12 metabolism is hampered. Now clinical features, how the patient will present to us. Okay, patient will come with anemia, so pallor, fatigue, patient will be irritable, loss of appetite. Okay, another clinical features, glossitis, stomatitis. Glossitis, stomatitis, and the neurological features we will get more in vitamin B12 deficient megaloblastic anemia. Now another, skin hyperpigmentation on knuckles and terminal phalanges, hepatosplenomegaly. Hepatosplenomegaly we may get, we may not get. Neurologic abnormalities, loss of position and vibration sense. Can anybody tell me position and vibration sense mediated by which pathway? Physiology. Okay. Dorsal column medial lemniscus pathway. Okay. This position and vibration sense is carried by. Now other neurologic features are memory loss, confusion, convulsions, and developmental delay. Now lab findings or investigations. Investigations, as I earlier said, the macrocytic anemia, that is MCV will be more than 100 femtoliter, 100 to 130, and as all cell lines are impaired or suppressed, so there will be leukopenia and thrombocytopenia. Total count will be low and platelet count will be low. Hypersegmented neutrophils. Hypersegmented neutrophils means, anyone? Five, more than 5, 6 or more than 6, okay. So if neutrophil has more than 5 lobes, then we will call it hypersegmented neutrophils. Bone marrow. Now bone marrow, when will we do bone marrow? When there is more than one cell lines are suppressed. Suppose if we get anemia associated with either leukopenia or thrombocytopenia or both, then we will do bone marrow study. In bone marrow, the marrow will be cellular, and as I said earlier, there will be nuclear cytoplasmic asynchrony, because nuclear maturation is impaired and cytoplasm maturation is normal. Again, myeloid and platelet precursors are affected, that's why total count and platelet count will be low. And serum LDH will be increased. continued. These features are for both folate and vitamin B12 deficient megaloblastic anemia. Now specific features: in folate deficiency anemia, serum folate will be low, that is less than 3 nanogram per milliliter, and vitamin B12 deficient megaloblastic anemia, serum vitamin B12 level will be low, and there will be increased homocysteine and methyl malonyl CoA. Okay, why? Because vitamin B12 acts as cofactor in two reactions, one homocysteine to methionine and methyl malonyl CoA to succinyl CoA. Okay, so when there will be vitamin B12 deficiency, these reactions will not occur. So the precursors or homocysteine and methyl malonyl CoA will be more, and urinary excretion of methyl malonic acid will be increased. Then how to treat folate deficiency anemia? We will supplement folate 0.5 to 1 mg per day. Okay, oral or parenteral, to be given for 3 to 4 weeks. Then maintenance dose will be very less. We can prescribe any multivitamin that contains at least 0.2 milligram folate. Transfusion indicated only in severe anemia. Hemoglobin level will be very less, or there is associated symptoms of heart failure, then only transfusion is indicated. An important question: why vitamin B12 deficiency to be ruled out before giving folate? Because as I said, in vitamin B12 deficient megaloblastic anemia, neurological features or neurological complications will be more. So if we don't rule out and prescribe folate, then the hematologic features of both folate and vitamin B12 deficiency anemia will be reversed, because those are almost similar, but neurological manifestations will persist. So either we have to rule out vitamin B12 deficiency before giving folate, or if there is not any facility to do the vitamin B12 test or to rule out vitamin B12 deficiency, then give vitamin B12 along with folate. So give both. How to treat vitamin B12 deficiency anemia? 1000 microgram parenterally daily for 2 weeks. Fast. Okay. And in younger children, we can start with lower doses, like 250 microgram is enough. So in younger children, we can start with 250 microgram. Otherwise, we'll start with 1000 microgram daily for 2 weeks. Then weekly, until hematocrit value becomes normal. Okay. And if there is neurological complications or neurological features, then we will give vitamin B12 every 2 weeks up to 6 months, and then maintenance dose will be continued monthly, lifelong. In which patients? In patients with pernicious anemia, malabsorption, or patients with neurological complications. So in severe vitamin B12 deficiency anemia, this will be continued lifelong. Okay. So our next topic is approach to hemolytic anemia. Hemolysis. Hemolysis means destruction of RBCs. Okay. So RBC will be destroyed. So RBC count will be low. If RBC count will be low, then the oxygen carrying capacity will be less, tissue less oxygen. So there will be hypoxia. And in hypoxia, there will be increased erythropoietin release. Okay, so bone marrow erythropoietic activity will be more. That is called compensatory erythroid hyperplasia. Okay, erythroid hyperplasia will try to compensate the less hemoglobin level or anemia. Now after hemolysis, when we will get features of hemolytic anemia, when destruction will be more than production. Production is not enough sufficient to meet the destruction of RBC. So marrow is trying to produce, but that is not sufficient for body. So there will be hemolytic anemia. Now causes of hemolytic anemia may be congenital or inherited. There are some causes that is acquired. First, congenital causes of congenital causes of hemolytic anemia. What are they? First, hemoglobinopathies, that is defect in hemoglobin molecule. Okay, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia. Okay. Next, enzyme defect, G6PD. G6PD deficiency, that is glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. Another is pyruvate kinase deficiency. Okay. Then membrane defect, RBC membrane defect, that is hereditary spherocytosis or hereditary elliptocytosis. Normal shape of RBC will be changed as the stability of membrane is hampered here. Normal shape of RBC, anyone? What is normal shape of RBC? Biconcave. Okay. So that shape will be gone in membrane defects. Another lipid membrane defects, that is porphyria and A beta lipoproteinemia. So these all are causes of congenital hemolytic anemia. It is important to know whether the cause is congenital or acquired, because clinical features will be different. Now there are various acquired causes. First cause is damage to RBC. Damage to RBC cause hemolysis. Damage may be mechanical, may be physical, may be chemical. Okay. Now in mechanical injury, there are two types: macroangiopathic hemolytic anemia, microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. Macroangiopathic, that is artificial heart valves. Artificial heart valves will cause damage to RBC. So hemolysis will be there. And march hemoglobinuria. During prolonged marching, there is physical strain to the lower limbs and causing damage to the RBCs of lower limbs. From that marching, the name is march hemoglobinuria. Okay. Free hemoglobin molecule will be released in urine. Microangiopathic hemolytic anemia, DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, HUS, hemolytic uremic syndrome, and ITP. Okay, these will be discussed in next class or later. Now burns will cause physical injury to the RBCs, and chemical injury, snake bite, lead and arsenic toxicity will cause chemical injury to the RBC. Now other causes: infection, malaria. We all know in malaria there is hemolysis of RBC. Other infections: Kala-Jor, Clostridium welsii. Nowadays Clostridium oelsi is known as Clostridium perfringens. Okay. Antibody mediated, that is autoimmune hemolytic anemia, is of two types, maybe warm antibody hemolysis, maybe cold antibody hemolysis. Hemolytic disease of newborn, that is due to vitamin K deficiency. Drugs, cefotetan, ceftriaxone. Cefotetan is second generation cephalosporin and ceftriaxone is third generation. Other causes, hypersplenism, cold agglutinin disease, paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria. These all are causes of hemolytic anemia. Now, how the patient will present to us or will come in OPD? Patients of hemolytic anemia will come with pallor, icterus, splenomegaly, gallstones. So, the clinical features: pallor, icterus, splenomegaly, gallstones, hemolytic phases, leg ulcer. All these clinical features will not get in a single patient. Pallor will be there in every patient, but other features are not. Icterus and gallstones we will get in patients of hereditary spherocytosis. Okay. Hemolytic phases, we all know we will get in thalassemia. Here is the picture of hemolytic phases. Cheekbones or zygomatics will be broader. There will be maxillary hyperplasia. Okay. Increase due to increased marrow activity. Hypertelorism will be there and nasal bridge will be depressed. So these are features of hemolytic phases we will get in thalassemia. Leg ulcer we will get in sickle cell anemia. Okay. And what left as splenomegaly. Splenomegaly we will get in thalassemia major, maybe in thalassemia intermedia we will get. So in every patient pallor will be there, but other features will we will not get all clinical features in a single patient. Okay. Depending on the type of hemolytic anemia, clinical features will be different. Now, there is some difference in clinical features of congenital and acquired hemolytic anemia. That's why it is important to know the cause, whether it is congenital or whether it is acquired. Anemia will be there in both congenital and acquired hemolytic anemia depending on severity, maybe mild, moderate, severe. But last four features, bony changes, splenomegaly, leg ulcer, cholelithiasis. As I said, leg ulcer we will get in sickle cell anemia, cholelithiasis we will get in thalassemia, hereditary spherocytosis. Most commonly we get in hereditary spherocytosis and sickle cell anemia. So these last four features, bony changes, splenomegaly, leg ulcer and this cholelithiasis, these will be present in congenital hemolytic anemia but absent in acquired hemolytic anemia. Diagnosis. Diagnosis under some subheadings, because diagnostic findings are many in hemolytic anemia. So first, evidence of RBC breakdown, maybe intravascular, maybe extravascular. Next, some specific evidence for intravascular hemolysis, which will be absent in extravascular hemolytic anemia. Red blood cell changes and evidence of erythroid hyperplasia. First evidence of RBC breakdown. When hemolysis will be there, jaundice will be there, indirect bilirubin will be increased, but direct bilirubin will be normal because conjugation process is not impaired here. But if there is associated gallstones or associated liver disease, then we may get increased direct bilirubin. DCT, direct Coombs test, positive in most immune hemolytic anemia like autoimmune hemolytic anemia. Plasma haptoglobin, there are two compounds, haptoglobin and hemopexin. Both are liver synthesized proteins. What they do? Haptoglobin binds to free hemoglobin molecule and hemopexin binds to free heme molecule. So after hemolysis, when there will be free hemoglobin or free heme, this haptoglobin and hemopexin will go and bind to that molecule. So plasma level of haptoglobin and hemopexin will be low and LDH level will increase. Now some specific findings for intravascular hemolysis. Hemoglobinemia, free hemoglobin molecule will release in the plasma. So that is hemoglobinemia. Then hemoglobinuria. As I said, haptoglobin molecules are there to bind free hemoglobin molecule. Okay. But the amount of haptoglobin is fixed. So at one point, haptoglobin molecules are saturated. There will be no haptoglobin left to bind the free hemoglobin. So excess free hemoglobin molecule will release in urine. That causes hemoglobinuria. And some free hemoglobin molecule will be reabsorbed by proximal renal tubule. Okay. And these heme-laden tubular cells, when lost, then lost heme-laden tubular cells, we will call it hemosideриnuria. Okay. So free hemoglobin in plasma, that is hemoglobinemia, free hemoglobin in urine, that is hemoglobinuria, and heme-laden tubular cells in urine, that is hemosideриnuria. Okay. RBC changes. Hemolysis will be there, mechanical or any type of damage to RBC will occur, so shape of RBC will change. This is the shape of elliptocyte. We will find in hereditary elliptocytosis. Also this is called Seeger-Shaped cells. Okay. Next is spherocytes. We will find in hereditary spherocytosis. This is hereditary stomatocytosis. Now these cystocytes, bar cell and spar cell, these three we will get in microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. Earlier we discussed what are they, HUS, ITP, DIC. Okay. Now target cell. Target cell we will get in hemoglobinopathies. Like in thalassemia, we can get this target cell. Also we will found in liver disease. Sickle cell in sickle cell anemia. And this teardrop cell. Teardrop cell we will found in when there is bone marrow infiltration or there is some splenic abnormality, splenomegaly. And less commonly teardrop cell we get in thalassemia and megaloblastic anemia. But the chances are less. Now evidence of erythroid hyperplasia. There is compensatory erythroid hyperplasia in the bone marrow. So after hemolysis, marrow will try to produce RBCs. So first, immature RBCs will form, that is reticulocyte. This is reticulocyte, okay. Then the reticulocyte will form the shape and size of and color of also, and color of polychromatic cells, that is known as polychromasia. When the RBC reticulocyte is in immature form, these polychromatic red cells will get in blood picture or peripheral blood smear. After that, when these RBCs will mature, then polychromasia will be gone, but the size will be same, larger, that is macrocyte. So that is macrocytosis. And bone marrow will be cellular and normoblastic erythroid hyperplasia, and myeloid erythroid ratio will be less, 1:1 or less. What is normal myeloid erythroid ratio? Anybody? Normal myeloid erythroid ratio. Okay. 2:1 to 4:1. We first know the normal thing before we go to the abnormal thing. Now bony changes. Bony changes, broadening of diploic spaces and thickening of frontal and parietal bone. That is commonly we get in thalassemia, hair on end appearance. This skull X-ray is showing hair on end appearance. There is thickening of frontal and parietal bones. And this hand X-ray, we can see there is thinning of cortex. Cortex is very thin and the marrow is widened. So thinning of cortex and marrow widening in carpal and metacarpal bones of hand. Now there are some specific tests for some causes of hemolytic anemia. Just know the names. Paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, Ham test or sucrose hemolysis test, deficiency of CD55 or CD59. This is important for MCQ purpose also. Granulocyte and monocyte assay for flow cytometry. Donat-Landsteiner test for paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria. And osmotic fragility test for diagnosis of hereditary spherocytosis. Later we will discuss this test. HPLC for abnormal hemoglobin, that is hemoglobinopathy, sickle cell anemia or thalassemia. And enzyme studies, G6PD and pyruvate kinase for G6PD deficiency anemia and pyruvate kinase deficiency. Now, next topic is hereditary spherocytosis. See, this is the cross section of RBC membrane. This is lipid bilayer, and this ankyrin, spectrin, alpha spectrin, beta spectrin, band 3, all are proteins. When these proteins will be deficient, then hereditary spherocytosis will occur. In deficiency of these proteins, basically the coupling of this lipid bilayer and underlying membrane skeleton will be lost. So, RBC membrane will be damaged and RBC will lose its normal biconcave shape. Okay. And when RBC will pass through spleen, the RBC will be trapped and destroyed by spleen. So hemolysis will be there, anemia will be there. Clinical features. In hereditary spherocytosis, patient will present to us with pallor, jaundice, splenomegaly. Pallor depending on severity. Depending on severity of hereditary spherocytosis, we will get mild or moderate or severe pallor. Bilirubin or pigment gallstone formation. I earlier said that icterus and gallstones are most common in hereditary spherocytosis. Now, in severe form of hereditary spherocytosis, that is the crisis phase, when there is parvovirus B19 infection, that is severe most infection, then there will be aplastic crisis. And in other viral infection except parvovirus B19, there will be hypoplastic crisis, that is less severe. And if there is associated folate deficiency, megaloblastic crisis will be there. We will get both features of both megaloblast and hereditary spherocytosis. In hereditary spherocytosis, hemoglobin will be low because anemia is there, and MCV is low and MCHC will be high. Full form of hemoglobin concentration, mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration, MCV mean corpuscular volume, okay. And indirect bilirubin will be high. There will be high reticulocyte count and spherocytes on blood smear. These are spherocytes, okay. And MCHC more than 35 gram per deciliter and RDW less than 14%. That is the screening test for hereditary spherocytosis. So basically from CBC we can get the idea of whether it can be a case of hereditary spherocytosis, because in CBC we will get value of MCHC and RDW both, okay. So just a CBC report is sufficient. Osmotic fragility test. Osmotic fragility test is diagnostic test for hereditary spherocytosis. We will keep the RBCs in the hypotonic solution, that is from 0.9 to 0.1%. If the RBC is normal, then hemolysis will begin at 0.5% and ends at 0.2 to 0.3%. But in hereditary spherocytosis, hemolysis begins at 0.7%, that is less hypotonic solution, and ends at 0.4 to 0.5%. So when hemolysis occur in less hypotonic solution, that means the fragility of that RBC is more. So osmotic fragility has increased. So then we will get the diagnosis of hereditary spherocytosis. Treatment, how to treat? Lifelong folic acid supplementation, 1 to 5 milligram per day, because it is the protein or mutation of the genes encoding that ankyrin, spectrin, beta 3 proteins will cause hereditary spherocytosis. So there is no drug or medication that will treat the hereditary spherocytosis, but we will supplement folic acid and blood transfusion in severe anemia, okay. And splenectomy in severe hereditary spherocytosis or maybe moderate hereditary spherocytosis with poor growth, frequent aplastic or hypoplastic crisis, or there may be cardiomegaly. Okay. Today our last topic, autoimmune hemolytic anemia. That is antibody mediated hemolytic anemia. Is of mainly two types, warm antibody hemolysis, cold antibody hemolysis. Warm antibody is of IgG type and cold is of IgM type. Another thing type, that is paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria, that is almost similar to cold antibody hemolysis. Causes of warm antibody hemolysis, mainly it is idiopathic. Other known causes are SLE, immunodeficiency, Evans syndrome. Evans syndrome is autoimmune hemolytic anemia associated with thrombocytopenia. That is Evans syndrome and medication induced. And patient with present to us with same pallor, icterus, fatigue, hemoglobinuria, splenomegaly. Lab findings, hemoglobin will be low, platelet will be normal. In Evans syndrome, platelet will be low. Spherocytosis, polychromasia, already explained. DCT, direct Coombs test, positive, and indirect Coombs test, negative. Okay. What is the basic difference between direct and indirect Coombs test? In direct Coombs test, the antibodies are bound to the RBC molecule. We will check the antibodies bound to the RBCs. After that, we will add Coombs reagent. If there is agglutination, that means DCT is positive and antibodies are attached to the RBC molecules. But if antibodies are not there, so there will be no agglutination, DCT will be negative. But in indirect Coombs test, we will test the free antibodies, not the bound antibodies. Free antibodies, then in free antibodies we will get from the serum, then we will add separately RBCs. Then if there is free antibodies, then that will bind with the RBCs. Again, the same process, we will add Coombs reagent, that is anti-human antibody, and agglutination will occur. If there is free antibodies in the serum, then only agglutination will occur. If there is no free antibody, then agglutination will not occur. We can transfuse the blood. Treatment of warm antibody hemolysis. Steroid, prednisolone. Okay, 2 mg, 2 milligram per kg per day. To be continued until direct Coombs test becomes negative. Then alternative is IVIG, 1 gram per kilogram per day for 2 days. Okay. And when this prednisolone IVIG will not work, then rituximab, and the last stage is splenectomy. Cold antibody hemolysis, that is the IgM type of antibodies, agglutinate RBCs at temperature less than 37 degrees centigrade. That's why the name is cold antibody hemolysis. Causes idiopathic, and known causes are infection with Epstein-Barr virus or mycoplasma and lymphoproliferative disorder. Clinically, we will get low hemoglobin, hemoglobinemia and hemoglobinuria. Treatment, avoid cold exposure, because here agglutination occurs at less than 37 degrees centigrade. Cause to be ruled out and treat that cause. Prednisolone here is less effective. Okay. So mainly treatment is treat the cause. So what are the difference between warm antibody hemolysis and cold antibody hemolysis? Warm antibody hemolysis, warm antibody is of IgG type, cold antibody is of IgM type. Warm antibody hemolysis normally occur at 37 to 40 degrees centigrade. Cold antibody hemolysis normally occur at less than 37 degrees centigrade. And treatment of both are different. Prednisolone steroid will be effective in warm antibody hemolysis. Here it is less effective or not effective in cold antibody hemolysis. Now paroxysmal cold hemoglobinuria. It is mainly just like the cold antibody hemolysis, but there is some difference. That is, here the antibody is of IgG type, like warm antibody hemolysis. It is mediated by Donat-Landsteiner hemolysin, that is the IgG cold reactive autoantibody with anti-P specificity.